Yo, what's up, YouTube? This is your boy Jay from Keeping It Real, your arbiter of gaming news and commentary, hitting you off with a studio production video where you know this is your channel, where all gamers' voices are heard. With your boy Jay, always dropping the word. Keeping them other gaming YouTubers like, what you heard? And where you always know, we always keep it all the way real. So what's up, everybody? I just want to thank you all for checking out my studio production video today, where I slow everything down and put on that studio shine. So like usual, I'm going to go ahead and dig right into this. And this one's going to be on the Xbox X, and rather if the lack of VR is going to hinder the Xbox X. And of course, I'm going to go ahead and link this in the description. It's from Express, and we got Martin here that does the article here, and subtitle in this one is Xbox One X Update, Bad News if you were looking forward to this feature. And they're presented it as these are one of the things that the PS4 Pro will be a step ahead of the X, even with its superior power. And they're pointing out the fact that the Pro will have VR, and of course the X, upon initial launch, won't have it. And they talk about rather, how much of that would be a factor. And I wanted to go ahead and dig into that, and go ahead and throw my piece in there, and also hear from you guys, see what you guys think on this. So as far as I can see now, we know initially when it comes to VR, it was a huge thing. It kind of like always has been for a long time now. This is not the first time VR has come up. And in my opinion, if you really look at VR and look what it's offering now, especially just across the spectrum, there's one thing you're going to notice is that it's still kind of in its early stages, where the idea of what it is a great thing. However, they haven't really fully realized it to what its full potential could be just yet. That's one of the main things you're going to notice if you just look at all the VR products across the spectrum. Now, I would say that is to the exception of what Microsoft is doing with HoloLens. What they're doing with that is exception to that, because it's not utilizing all those wires. Everything is built in. The cameras, motion cameras are built in. The sensors are all built in. It has next to no wires at all. Now that's on a whole nother level, but we're gonna keep it to what the PS4 VR and Oculus Rift and a lot of these other type of VR devices are about first. And when it comes to those, if you really look at them and what they're about, they're not really that fully realized. Now, when it comes to PS4 and PS4 VR, you got to really take a close look at it, man. I mean, it's kind of like a wired mess. I mean, you got all these wires coming all over the place. When you're using the headset is kind of it's big. Now, from what I hear, it's very comfortable, and it's actually even comfortable in some of the more expensive VR units. However, the wires are just a thing that you have to contend with, as well as you have to be certain distances and have certain space for it to function properly, as well as set up cameras. So it's really just a lot of hassle. And if you really think about it, a lot of reasons of why we even have consoles in the first place is so we don't have to deal with all that hassle. We just basically turn the damn thing on and it just works. And I think that's one of the things that we have to think about when it comes to the reliability of VR, especially in the way it is now when it comes to VR. I mean, when it comes to the PS4 VR, it's one of those things where you look at the support for what Sony is doing on VR right now, and besides from that game Flashpoint that came out recently, and Resident Evil 7 trying to implement a VR, we do see Bethesda trying to do something with VR, or some things that are coming up in the future, for most likely next year. it's great and all, but you could still see where when it comes to the actual unit itself on PS4, it's a great cheaper option, but it's not necessarily, you know, there yet when it comes to VR, when it comes to the masses. In my opinion, I still see it as a niche thing, and you don't have to just take my word for it. All you have to do is just look at what VR makes up for the market when it comes to even PlayStation. It's a very tiny percentage. And overall, it's about like a less than 5% of the market. We're talking about percentages like 2 and 3% or less. So it really is not something that's really caught on, and it's really not something that is caught on to mainstream and everybody just has to get one and go and get it. It's not one of those things yet. It's still one of those things that's still developing. Perhaps the next innovation of what PlayStation does next might be that next thing. But what I'm looking at is what Microsoft is going to do when it comes to their next big thing, when it comes to VR. But now we got to look at this like this. And I'm saying this to say that if you really put some real thought into it, of what VR is and what it has been so far, I don't see that posing so much of a threat at all. I think the main thing for most gamers is about the games and about what we're playing on that's going to enhance those games, and that's going to give us a more enriching and a more exhilarating experience. And the big thing right now is high frame rate and high graphical fidelity. And I think that's the main thing that's going to win out. I don't think VR is even in a spectrum of that. VR is still a side note to that, because just regular old video games that you just play without anything on your face is still the norm right now. And I just think we haven't really evolved as gamers along far enough for it to be, for VR to really be a serious challenge to just playing video games regularly. I just don't see it. And I think it still has a long way before that is even a thing. I think we're still trying to evolve when it comes to the console part of it. And I think Xbox X is a big part of that evaluation. It's a big part of that evolutionary step. And I think it's one of those things where we're getting too ahead of ourselves before we even lock down a console that can provide us with a solid 60 frames per second on each and every game. And that's a standard. We shouldn't be getting Destiny 2 and it's still talking about 30 frames. Come on, get out of here. I think until we're at a place where 60 frames is just a standard across all developers, and it's like of course it's 60 frames. And until we get to a place where, 4K is just more of native 4K is more of an actual attainable thing where it's not so difficult on all platforms. I don't see how we get to the point where we're starting to do VR. You know what I mean? I don't know about you guys, but I feel like maybe we need to crawl before we walk, and maybe walk before we run. And I feel like VR is one of those things where I think we're getting ahead of ourselves when we don't even have a console industry where we have standard native 4K 60 yet. I mean, if you really think about it, even going back before this, we don't even have an industry where it was standard 1080p 60. We didn't even have that, let alone native 4K 60. So I think before we get ahead of ourselves with VR, and I think that's the reason why it hasn't caught on, because it's kind of like, we're just seeing too far into the future. Sometimes that's not so much of a good thing because the technology hasn't really caught up. And I think that's what the issue is with that. And that's why I think that PS4 having VR is not going to really be much of an impact at all. And I don't think it's really a big deal. And I think it won't be a big deal to most people. If you really want VR, that's fine. Go ahead. But I doubt people are going to be like, well, I just have to get a PS4 over a Xbox X because PS4 has VR. I doubt that's going to be so much of a thing where it's going to actually pose an actual threat to the numbers of the sales of the Xbox X. I just doubt that. So yeah, man, that's my piece on that. I would like you guys to go ahead and hit me up in the comment box and tell me what you think, man. And I would love to see what you guys think about it and go from there. All right, man. Until the next time. This is Jay. I'm always keeping it real, and I'm gone.